Hi guys and welcome to the circus. Today I'll show you my personal take on the defensive Luquier deck we have right now in Vanguard Zero with Dreamy Fortress as our main defense. This current build that I have right now is just one of the few builds that I made. I think the playstyle of this build is interesting and I'm not going to explain every card here because I've already explained it on the previous deck builds that I've done. So I'll just show you guys an overview of it and then let's see what you guys think about this. So here is the deck. Okay, first of all, the starter is really a key card in this build because Smiling Presenter is the one that fetches your pieces from the top 10 cards of your deck, which is actually a nice number to start with because in Zero, you only have a 40 card deck, meaning you have a better chance to hitting those important pieces, like for example, a Trapeze, and the most important piece is copies of Dreamy Fortress in order to set up for that turn where you need to use Dreamy Fortress to survive and go for that finishing blow really late in the game. I like to use him as much as possible. Like when you go limit breaking, I always want to call Smiling Presenter and then fetch out another piece from the deck and possibly thin out my deck in order to hit those triggers effectively, because hitting triggers in this build that I've done can really end up into some really amazing shenanigans. Sometimes what I like to do also is use a Trapeze from hand to scoop in any unit from my board and then call out Smiling Presenter and then fetch another thing from the deck. I just like spamming Smiling Presenter as much as possible really early in the game because it's just that good of an ability. Next, we run 3 purple Trapezes, an absolute staple in the Pale Moon. If you wanna run her at 4, be my guest. I only have 3 right now and I think 3 is the best ratio for her because grade 1 slots are tight. I only run 2 Skull Jugglers here because grade 1 slots are really tight. I only managed to squeeze out 2 Soul Chargers here. You can still keep on spamming these Soul Chargers if you like to or if you want to. For example, go into your limit break, you can call those Nitro Jugglers and Skull Jugglers out and then replenish your soul after you limit break because you will still really need a lot of soul in this build in order to survive. The following grade 1s are the ones that I really like, which are 3 Fire Jugglers. Okay, so as I said before, checking triggers in this deck unlocks some amazing shenanigans. The reason that I ran Fire Juggler is because I don't really want to use that much counterblast. Fire Juggler and Midnight Bunny almost have the same skill, right? It's just that Fire Juggler is more of a high roll type of combo because it requires a trigger check. This type of build that I made doesn't really rely that much on multi-attacking. I know it's kind of a weird thing to say because it's Pale Moon, it's supposed to multi-attack, right? Fire Juggler is your main way to multi-attack if you can. It's just like, if you manage to multi-attack, you can do it. If not, just try to survive until you go for that finishing blow really late in the game with Dreamy Fortress being your main defense and then going ham on your limit breaks in order to finish the game. The last grade 1 I run is 1 Magician of Quantum Mechanics. Okay, so I said before that I don't want to use Counterblast that much, right? The reason why I run him as a tech card is because he opens up the soul for a lesser cost, if that makes sense. Sometimes you don't really want to use your limit break that early, and sometimes you have something in the soul that you want to call out, like for example another intercept or a Fire Juggler or a Trapeze or any kind of booster that you randomly soul charged. If you don't have him, it's fine, and if you did, it adds to more options early to mid game. In the late game, he falls off because you don't have counter chargers for this deck, which is why I only ran him at 1. Next, moving on to grade 2s, we run 4 Nitro Jugglers still because we need Soul Chargers. As I said, you just need to survive, so might as well just have intercepts that adds units to soul. Also, in my grade 1 slots, there's not much Soul Chargers, so I just bump all the Soul Chargers in the grade 2 slots in order to compensate for that. 1 tech card, which is 1 Bargain Cerberus because 10k bases are fine. And then the star of this build is 4 Dreamy Fortresses. He's just amazing. You get to survive on crucial turns, like for example, you don't have a PG or not enough PGs to hold off against your opponent. Dreamy Fortress just saves your day if you manage to put a lot of copies of him in the soul, which is actually, at least in my experience, easy to fulfill because of your spamming of Smiling Presenters, your Dancing Princesses, and possibly your random soul charge. He is your emergency button when you need to survive at least another turn in order to finish the game. I like going with Dreamy Fortress like if I'm on 4 or 5 damage. Like for example, if I put my opponent into 4 damage or 5 damage before my Dreamy Fortress turn, I get a better chance on winning the game. Also, some players doesn't really know how Dreamy Fortress works, so it's kind of a advantage, but don't always think that other players doesn't know what this card does, because some decks, especially on retired decks and intercept removers like Narukami and Kagero, they know very well how this card works, and they can just completely deny this ability by just one card. If you already played with Dreamy Fortress, you guys probably know what I'm talking about. Last grade 2s are 4 Dancing Princesses of the Night Sky. Again, Dancing Princesses of the Night Sky opens up your deck. You wanna open up with Dancing Princess early, so maximizing her is fine. Instead of prioritizing on putting Trapezes in the soul, you wanna get Dreamy Fortresses in the soul as soon as possible, because you never know how RNG works and what triggers your opponent runs, because there are some times where you just get annihilated before you even start your Dreamy Fortress turn. So you gotta be careful on handling your defenses before you even use Dreamy Fortress, because after using Dreamy Fortress, you don't have any other options left most of the time. So that's one thing to take note of. On to the grade 3s, we only run 2 Nightmare Doll Alice. Sadly, I can't bump her up because you don't want to use Counterblast that much, and this deck doesn't always rely on multi-attacking. She's just here as an option if you have her. If your opponent somehow is on a grade 10 Vanguard, you can make use of Alice there. But sometimes you don't really have the luxury to use her, because most of the time you already used up most of your Counterblasts for Dancing Princesses and your Limit Break for Luquier. For Luquiers, obviously the main ride target. She's still amazing in this build because she synergizes well with your Dreamy Fortress turn, because every time you call the card from Soul, Luquier gains plus 3k, right? So during your opponent's turn and your Dreamy Fortress is up, if you have all 3 copies of Dreamy Fortress in the soul and 1 copy of him as an intercept, and Dreamy Fortress just managed to take on 3 attacks, afterwards, if your opponent has another attack, they have less of a chance to hit you, because after calling 3 Dreamy Fortresses, Luquier becomes a 20k body. It just basically adds another layer of defense. Having a Luquier Vanguard when you're using your Dreamy Fortress turn is really a must, because you won't get enough value, because this basically implies that you're maximizing on using your Dreamy Fortresses in order to survive. Next, we run 4 Midnight Invaders as your heal. Basically a generic 12k attacker when it's attacking a Vanguard. Nothing to talk about that much. And finally, I like to run 3 Sword Magician Sarah. Again, you don't really have that much Counterblast to work with late game. So if you have a Sarah in your hand and you're going for game and you feel like you have no other ways to multi-attack, you can ride Sarah. And if you have a grade 3 on board or in hand, you have a possible multi-attack right there. Sarah and Fire Juggler are free multi-attacking units, but they're a bit of a higher roll type of multi-attack because they both rely on trigger checks. If you manage to do so, you can pull off some amazing shenanigans with them. Believe me, I've done a lot of good stuff using Sarah and Fire Juggler in one attack. I managed to finish games with them, so I like running Sarah here as your somewhat like a finisher. The sad part is she's a 10k base, which is not that good at this state of the game. You always want to have a 11k base Vanguard, because having a 10k base Vanguard opens up your whole defense by a lot at this point of the game. So that's about it for the list. And finally, we run 9 draws and 4 heals. I don't want to run stands here because there's no units that can hit over defensives. We just want to run draws as well because we need to survive and get our pieces, get our intercepts. This build is basically survive until the late game kind of build. If you did try this list out, please leave your experiences in the comments. I'd like to hear your opinions about it. Do you like this list or not? If you did didn't, please leave a reason why in the comments as well, because I'd really like to learn from you guys. But for now, this is the list that I'm going for with the pure defensive build of Pale Moon in Zero. Again, leave your thoughts and suggestions in the comments. Like this video if you like the list, dislike it if you don't, and leave your reasons why in the comments. If you got some good results using this list, please leave your stories also in the comments, because I like hearing your stories when you decide to use the list that I've made. So yeah, if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you next time.